Before Bobby Shmurda would become a hip-hop sensation in the mid-2010s, thanks to his hit song Hot and the creation of a viral dance craze. Before Bobby Shmurda would find himself arrested in a police raid in 2014 and be locked up for over 6 years.
Bobby, what do you have to say to your fans? Bobby, anything?
Before Bobby Shmurda would have over 194,000 followers on Twitter, over 1.4 million followers on Instagram, and over 2 million subscribers on YouTube at the time of this recording. Back in October of 2014, Bobby Shmurda was one of the biggest rap names on the planet. His song Hot had blown up online and earned this kid from East Flatbush a contract from Epic. Dog, celebrities of all types were even taking parts in the shmoney dancing craze. Are you? Hey. In an interview with New York Magazine in the fall of 2014, Bobby said, "My music is straight facts. There are a lot of gangsters in my hood." Within 2 months, those words would come back to haunt this talented young artist, because just as quickly as he entered the spotlight, he disappeared after getting arrested during a police raid of his neighborhood crew. Before he knew it, Bobby Shmurda would find himself serving close to 7 years in prison and wouldn't taste freedom again until literally right now, in February 2021. But how did Bobby find himself in this predicament in the first place? And is he really as guilty as the police made him out to be? Hey, what's poppin', guys? Your boy Marlon Palmer back at it again. Today I'm gonna be doing my best to answer those questions for you as we celebrate Bobby Shmurda's release with a look at his come up in his brand new episode of Before They Are Famous. Now, despite spending the better part of a decade behind bars, Bobby has managed to maintain his relevancy in the hip-hop world. And as we deep dive into his story, I think you'll come to realize why he's such a passionate fan base. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at ThatDudeMcFly if you want to let me know how we're doing. And let's get into the story. Bobby Shmurda was born Akil Jean Pollard on August 4th, 1994 in Miami, Florida. His mother, Leslie Pollard, is of African-American descent, and his father, Gervais Johnson, is Jamaican. Now, despite being born down south, Bobby didn't stay there long. His pops got locked up when Bobby was only 2 months old and found himself serving a sentence of 120 years on an attempted murder charge. This turn of events in their lives led his mom to packing up all their belongings and moving him and his older brother Gervais to East Flatbush in Brooklyn, where they would live at 95th and Clarkson. Over the years of his life, Bobby would return to Florida time and time again, not only to see his dad in prison, but to spend time with his grandparents and uncles. So while Flatbush is undeniably home, he still has some southern roots. As early as elementary school, Bobby found himself having to contend with ADD. He would finish his work as quickly as possible and then run out of class. He'd also get into a whole bunch of fights trying to impress girls from the neighborhood. By the time he was in the 5th grade, Bobby, who also went by his childhood nickname of Chewy, at home and on the streets, had already begun selling crack. He told the Washington Post, "I was running with older guys, my brother and his friends, so by the time they was doing stuff, I was doing stuff. So they was like in the 9th grade. To Bobby, his neighborhood crew, an offshoot of the Crips, was family. But it wasn't always fun and games with his older brother and friends. Sometimes, since he was the youngest, they would pick on him relentlessly, especially when they got high. But Bobby would always stand his ground and defend himself. Eventually, they respected him for that. You'll come to find out respect is a big thing for Bobby.
I be bragging, all my clips official, so we never get it tracked. I ain't from picking, but I'm known for pistol packing.
For most of Bobby's childhood and teenage years, music was nothing more than an afterthought. Sometimes he would remix old songs, making his own versions of tracks by artists like 50 Cent, Jay-Z, Crime Mob. In fact, Knuck If You Buck by Crime Mob would be the first song he ever remixed when he was around 10 years old. He was also a big fan of acts like Tupac, Biggie, and Lil Wayne. I need to hear that Knuck If You Buck. I need to hear that remix, bruh. But most of the time, he was totally focused on his life on the street as part of this neighborhood crew. Before he was 18, Bobby had even spent 15 months in detention for violating probation on a gun charge. Then one day in late 2013, everything would change.
Yeah, I almost got shot for it a couple times. Like,
no, a little boy.
Like 11. Like
you was 11, almost got shot.
Yeah, nigga came, got like, listen, little, hey, what's going on?
Cause you little now.
On an evening in November of that year, Bobby was headed up the stairs of his apartment building to see a buddy named Pluto. Pluto was the local marijuana vendor in this part of town, and when Bobby got to his front door, he immediately felt something cold and hard touch the back of his head. When he turned around, he was staring directly down the barrel of a revolver. The man holding the weapon was wearing a ski mask, and he wasn't alone. He demanded to know where Pluto was at. Suddenly, Pluto's door opened, and there he was. But this action spooked the gunman, who immediately fired and shot Pluto. Bobby tried to plead that he didn't see anything happen, but the gunman dragged him inside the apartment, where they ransacked the place to find money and weed. They instructed Bobby to lie on the floor while they did so. Eventually they left, and Bobby realized that his friend Pluto was dead. This was the moment he decided to make a serious attempt at a career that he had always fantasized about but done nothing next to make real. He told GQ, "I felt like I survived for a reason." Within 2 months from that moment, he and his friend Rowdy had written over a dozen songs, more than enough for a mixtape, which they then took to selling on the street for $5 a pop. Inside of his neighborhood crew of Crips, a new faction was slowly coming together with Bobby as the figurehead, and this group became so close that they invented a pair of fake last names to go by, adding sh to money and murder to create the Shmoney and the Shmurdas.
It came from like you know, when we was getting money, you gotta keep quiet. When we was doing things that we was supposed to do, you gotta keep quiet, you know?
When they decided they needed a new name to go by, Bobby came up with GS9. This crew was more of a hip-hop collective than it was anything else, and recognizing the potential of Bobby's music, the GS9 crew decided to make music videos and upload them to YouTube. They chose Hot and Shmuddy Dance and paid a local kid $300 to shoot the videos for them. And now look at the payoff. Like, wow, some real shmoney. Just like that, in March of 2014, the Shmuddy Dance craze was born, and Hot would surpass over 20,000 views within a few weeks. By May, that track was a certified hit. Early on in his career, Bobby used members of his crew to be his managers, but after blowing up, he knew he needed real representation. So he reached out to his uncle, Christopher Debo Wilson, who ran a small hip-hop record label out of Miami called Hard Times. Wilson booked Bobby his first gigs to open for Meek Mill in Philly and Fabulous in New York. Suddenly, the music industry was beginning to take Bobby seriously. By July of 2014, Shot Money, an executive from Epic, and the man who shepherded 50 Cent to fame, would discover Bobby's music on YouTube, and 2 weeks later, Bobby was showcasing his talents to a room full of executives, and his infectious energy got him signed to their label. Oh, and got him pretty damn viral too. That video is epic. I don't care. In a strategic effort to get some distance between Bobby and his Flatbush crew, his uncle rented him a condo in Fort Lauderdale, where he could stay with a handful of his closest friends. For most of the summer of 2014, Bobby was on the road, touring all across the country, playing 5 shows a week and earning close to $20,000 a gig. He'd go on stage with Drake in New Jersey and even appeared on Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel.
I don't know, a lot of fun, but thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. It's gonna be good.
But whenever Bobby would return home for a gig, he'd always find police camped out at his shows. Once late in the summer, Bobby arrived with his crew for a gig in Queens and found a whole bunch of cops waiting for them. A search was conducted and they found a joint, which got everyone arrested, even though they were eventually let go with no charges pressed. They had it out for my boy. Earlier that summer, Bobby had also been arrested while hanging out at his girlfriend's place with a couple of her friends. That night, the police executed a search warrant on the home and claimed to see Bobby holding a gun in one hand and a joint in the other. Bobby's version differs. He says that he wasn't holding anything. The police found the weapon during the search and told him that they were going to charge him with unlawful possession. Throughout all of this, Bobby was in the middle of recording his debut album. Shaw Money tried to persuade him to do so in LA, but Bobby didn't like the city. The only place he really felt comfortable was at home in Flatbush. So eventually, the recording shifted to there. But by this point, his manager and uncle could read the writing on the wall. He knew things wouldn't end well in Brooklyn and decided to return to Miami, begging Bobby to come with him. Bobby never did, and they had a falling out.
Yeah, I lie, man. Trying to sue me right now, I'm in jail, everything, man. Got lying ass. He made some shit, man. I had him managing me at first, because right now I don't got no manager. I'm looking for a manager right now.
In November of 2014, Bobby's first EP titled Shmurda She Wrote was released. This should have been the greatest moment in Bobby's life, and instead it quickly turned into one of his worst. On December 18, 2014, Bobby had just finished a recording session at Quad Studios. He was on his way out of the building when he was arrested by police, who then raided the studios looking for illegal firearms and drugs. Mere months after going supernova in the music industry, Bobby Shmurda and over a dozen of his friends had been arrested for allegedly operating a gang that conspired to commit murder, maintain an arsenal of weapons, and sell drugs. At the press conference announcing the arrest, use of the word gang was frequent. Evidence of the crimes was not. Bobby's real name was the first name to appear on the indictment. He was literally the headliner of the show, and he was categorized as the crime boss. The charges against him included 2 counts of illegally possessing a firearm and a misdemeanor count of reckless endangerment, but the more serious accusations were of so-called acts of conspiracy to commit murder, sell narcotics, possess firearms, and commit assault. It would take 2 years, but Bobby would eventually accept a plea deal on charges of conspiracy to possess weapons and possession of a weapon. He would do so largely because accepting this plea deal helped reduce the sentence of some of his GS9 crew, like his good friend Rowdy Rebel, while extending his own.
Bobby Shmurda admits he took a 7-year plea deal in his murder conspiracy case for his friend Rowdy Rebel, saying in an interview, "They offered me 5 and offered Rowdy 12. They said the only way they'll give him 7 is if I took 7 too. So you know, I had to take one for the dogs." What's your opinion on that?
Damn right, we're taking it.
That's a
real shit. Got to take it.
He was sentenced to 7 years in prison, which was then reduced to 5 years to credit the time he had already spent locked up awaiting trial. After originally being placed at Rikers Island, Bobby got into a series of incidents with the local population and clearly felt like he had to defend himself because he was eventually given a 4-year sentence for sneaking a prison shiv into his cell. The sentence was to run concurrently, which meant that he wouldn't have to serve additional time in prison, but it lampooned his chances to get early parole. In 2017, he was transferred to Clinton Correctional Facility in upstate New York. Now, Bobby didn't let his time in prison go to waste. He wrote screenplays for movies based on his life, and even made a guest appearance on Tekashi 6ix9's Stupid, phoning in his verse over the prison telephone. Meanwhile, outside, his fans kept hope for his eventual release alive with Free Bobby campaign on social media. In 2021, the decision was made by the Time Allowance Committee, which consists of prison staff and not the parole board, to let Bobby out a bit earlier than he was scheduled to be released. In an interview with TMZ, Bobby's mother told him that her son was most looking forward to an intimate meal with his family upon release. After that, he'll get back to his passion of making music. Yo, and his mom made him 50 pounds of oxtail? My goodness!
Oh my goodness, look at my baby, how are you?
You light, good. You light. You light.
And while it's undeniably great to see Bobby out of prison, he'll have to keep a low profile for the next few years because my man is gonna be on probation until 2026. The even better news is that he finally appears to have learned his lesson about sticking too close to home. He told NPR in a jailhouse interview, "I'll be in New York to handle business or do a show, but I don't want nothing to do with New York." Will he stick to that promise? Well, it's far too early to tell. And after all, this is before they're famous. What do you guys think of Bobby's story? Anything you haven't heard before? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Before They're Famous if you want to vote on what's next, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.